Well, Jay, I got to say, I am still grinning. We had a fantastic, and I mean fantastic, special episode interview with some heroes of ours in the space of AI.
Yeah, we sure did. This is our third AI Roundtable, and we had a world-class lineup. You know, we had Kristin Robinson, and if you don't know, Kristin's a senior correspondent at Billboard. She covers music publishing, technology, and has a particular expertise in AI. She hosts the Billboard podcast On the Record, which is one of our favorites.
Yes, indeed. We also had Vickie Nauman. For over 10 years, Vickie has run CrossBorderWorks, which she founded. She works with a portfolio of music tech companies on strategy, products, rights and data, and licensing.
Also on the panel, our friend Bobby Owsinski. And Bobby does it all. You know, he's author, producer, mixer, recording engineer, blogger, podcaster. We talked about his book, The Musician's AI Handbook. We talk about that often on the podcast.
And a new participant for us this time was Dani Deahl. Dani was recently promoted to VP Creator Policy and Corporate Affairs at Caldecott Music Group. She is also Head of Communications and Creator Insights at BandLab. So now, without further ado, here's the very special episode of the podcast. It's our AI Roundtable number 3. Let it roll.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
First question for Kristin. We, of course, are blessed to have you and Billboard really covering AI in music extensively, which has been really fantastic. I'm curious, what's the story that's gotten the most reaction from your readers, and what does that sort of tell all of us about where the industry's head is at in the world of AI?
To pick a recent example, I asked around with a lot of investors who had been approached by Suno late last year as part of their latest funding round, and finally found someone who was willing to leak their pitch deck to me. That had some of the best web traffic that we have had on a business story in a very long time. That story revealed that 7 million songs are generated by Suno every day, and an entire Spotify catalog's worth of music is generated every 2 weeks. I do think it's important to caveat that and say that whenever you generate on Suno, it offers you 2 options. So that 7 million, maybe you could cut it down to 3.5 million prompts or something like that. But still, regardless of whether that music gets shared or what, the fact that all of that is out there is mind-blowing. So that one got a lot of attention. I would say just the sheer scale of it was frightening for people, or awe-inspiring if you're more of a proponent of AI. But yeah, that got a lot of people talking.
This one's for Dani. I was reading Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act. He argues that we're all creators. If you're making dinner, if you're making a garden, you know, we're all creators. And I think that's true to a certain degree. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that as it relates to like BandLab. BandLab's been helping creators for over 10 years. Sort of being so early in that space, talk about that movement of music fans that aren't content to simply listen to music.
I think it's interesting that you brought up Rick Rubin as an example, to kick this topic off because I often talk about Rick Rubin. He famously is someone who has said that he doesn't know how to operate a lot of the things that surround him in the studio. Yet we attribute him, his name, his brand, his presence, his je ne sais quoi with some of our favorite songs that we listen to every single day. Of course, I believe that we all have the ability, we are creators. Every single one of us is a creator. We have the capability to create in every way imaginable. We all exercise it in different ways. Some of us might be better at cooking. Some of us might knit. Some of us make music. We're all capable of doing these things. How well we can do them, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, do we have the ability to even try to see if we can? And music is one of those things that has been hard for a lot of people to grasp entry level for a really long time. I remember being in college and taking music theory and having a sight sing and thinking, what did I get myself into? Most people don't have the time, energy, patience, etc., to deal with that. And so if we can have tools that help people at least get their feet wet and see if they can translate what's in their head to something that someone can listen to, I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. Wow. I want to jump over to professionals. This is a question for Bobby, actually. And of course, you've spent a lot of time helping producers and engineers understand technology. You built a career on that. How are working professionals in the studio really integrating the AI tools right now? And I'm going to take a wild guess and say there might be a generational divide there. But we talk about this all the time. Is everybody in the studio and in the professional world talking about it as well and adopting it?
I'm so glad you asked me that, because just a couple hours ago I read a survey, or the results of a survey that was done on audio professionals, with audio professionals. And it turns out that a lot fewer are using AI than you would think. A lot fewer have adopted it. And and most of the tools they're not music generator tools. What they are facilitators in production. But most professionals don't feel they need that, and they can work just as well without it. Now, that being said, the feeling is, well, this is inevitable, and everybody has tried it. The adoption rate is a lot lower than you might think, though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, before you guys came on, Mike and I were looking at a little exercise I did this morning. I just pulled up like 15 AI platforms and when they officially launched. And it's because a friend of mine asked me about it and said that it seemed like they'd been around a week and a half. And I'm looking at these things, and a lot of them have not been around very long. So this question's for Vickie. We have so many AI tools and platforms now, and they're not all negative. Some of these have very legal applications, very positive applications. Stem separation comes to mind. It's a brilliant engineering achievement. But a lot of these platforms, it sort of opens up this Pandora's box of rights issues. In your work, how do you sort of approach these complex issues?
Well, there's definitely a pattern of things that have come before this, where there's almost always a disruptive technology. And this goes back to, and I know I sound really old, but this goes back to the 2000 and the years just before that of distribution technology. Then there's been live streaming technology. There's been Web3 technology. There's been, all sorts of blockchain, all sorts of different things. And then there's a burst of companies who are leveraging that technology for the music business, because music is great, because it immediately makes whatever your tech is relevant with fans, and gives you a chance to onboard people who care about music into your environment. So we're kind of in that cycle right now, where it's unsustainable. There will not be room in the landscape, I don't believe, for a lot of small companies. I think this is going to be mostly a big boy big girl pants game, and there will be smaller companies that will probably get acquired, or there will be service providers. But the nuances around rights are really, really challenging for for any company that's really trying to do something around the music itself. AI mastering, awesome. Stem separation, even that is, not everybody wants stems separated out of music without approval and prior approval, and that goes to the artist's relationship with the labels on who gets to do that. But I think we're still in kind of a quagmire of rights around knowing how this is going to play out. And what most companies are doing right now is trying to secure private agreements to test technology, to start to move technology forward. But the one thing that's different this time is most of the labels have taken a position that the artists themselves have to opt in to all of this. And that is a different approach than other kinds of tech disruption in the past. I think it's the right approach. But I think then what does a market share for a catalog look like if only 10% of the artists say they want their music in it? So it opens up all sorts of business, legal, and commercial multiple Pandora's boxes.
It just makes your head spin. It really does. This is kind of for everyone. So, of course, AI can now analyze some streaming data, social behavior, consumption patterns to kind of tell an artist what song to release next. All of this stuff can be empowering, and it also can be this sort of creative cage, as if they didn't have enough things to think about and worry about these days. Now these variety of tools show up. What does that mean for artists? Is it a creative cage? Is it something that they will adopt? It seems so overwhelming.
A creative cage. I love that term.
I stole it from Jay.
It's a good one. One of the problems that artists have with this is the fact that, and again, looking at surveys and looking at just about everything you can think of, all the data, artists are afraid of losing their creativity to AI. That's their major problem with it. They feel that it's going to suck them dry, or that it's so good that the artist will not be able to compete on that level anymore. And I think that that's a fallacy, but it's part of the hype cycle of AI. And, we see this every day about AI is going to take everybody's jobs and, all of the hype that we hear. And for musicians, that's a big part of it. For artists, that's a big part of it. So, again, what's happening there, I think it's discouraging a lot of new artists or potential new artists from actually entering into the fray, which I think that's a shame. And that's what I lament more than anything, the fact that if we lose some great artists because of this, first of all, we won't know, but, again, the big problem, we want more artists rather than fewer of them.
Yeah, and musicians,
Bobby,
right, Bobby?
Can I ask you, Bobby, a question?
Sure.
Do you think that is mostly on recorded and performing artists, or is it composers, producers? Where do you think that opinion sits across the spectrum?
Oh, it's everybody, for sure. And I have to say, one of the problems I personally faced, I wrote a book that came out at the end of 2023, AI for music production, and I got such pushback that I stopped promoting it. And really, the first time I ever received a death threat, if you can believe that,
wow,
online, and it was because that people believe their creativity is going to be sucked from them. So again, fallacy, but that's what they believe. So we have some work to do to get over that.
Yeah, 100%. I keep reading these numbers that, Deezer's AI detection tool can identify, 60,000 tracks a day or whatever it is. And I would love, to me, that's like voodoo or witchcraft. I'd love to know how that sausage is made. But it's more complicated. And I'd love to get your thoughts, all of you, sort of your thoughts on this complex world we're falling into, where it's not just a song created with a text prompt. It may be Mike and I recorded a song in the string section we pulled. Maybe it's a horn section. Maybe it's a beat. But we wrote the music. We wrote the lyrics. And we're using it as a tool. Or maybe Bobby helped us master it with an AI mastering tool or whatever. Like, there's so many varying shades of gray that it's not as simple, unless it is that simple where there's just those songs that people are just jamming out there that were created. Give me a song about the moon. Boom. And there it is, and you put it up. Talk a little bit about sort of the complexities of that it's not as simple as just a song with a text prompt.
Yeah, that is where everything is going to live, basically, and that's where it already has been living. If you trace it all the way back to what I consider to be like the big inflection point when everyone kind of woke up about AI music was in 2023 when that ghostwriter fake Drake song Heart on My Sleeve went out. A lot of people at the time, and this is honestly ghostwriter's fault, he just said that it was an AI song. He didn't explain how he used AI. And really what the reality of the situation is it was AI voices, but he produced and wrote those songs in the style of Drake and The Weeknd himself. There was no capability to make a song that good at that time. Now, maybe, because that's how far we've come in just a couple years. But every time that you hear something being called an AI artist or an AI song, oftentimes there's more to the story than that. And that gets really complicated. Both from like a copyright ability perspective, but also, there's a lot of people who are using AI in bits and pieces of their production. And in talking to some professional songwriters and producers, some of the biggest in the game, actually just recently did an interview with Ryan Tedder where we talked about this a little bit. And he was like, there are absolutely bits and pieces of AI even in Hot 100 songs already. There's just a lack of disclosure happening because people see the stigma. Like Bobby was just saying, like getting death threats for even talking about the subject. People don't really have the ability, the average person on the internet does not have the ability to understand AI assisted. And also within the spectrum of AI assisted, is it 99%, AI, or is this like a different change of voice or one bass line in one section of the song? It's really complicated. There's not good phrasing around it. I'm trying to figure out how I phrase it when I talk about it. But the headlines make it sound a lot scarier than it actually is.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Kristin. And I think that, in my view, music creation and production for the foreseeable future has changed because of this. And it could be something as small, as you say, as adding a horn section, which might have been done with a splice pack in the past, but nobody knew that, or it might have been done synthetically. But I think that there's a resistance here to the idea that non-talented people are going in with prompts and creating songs that are going to replace the talented musicians and the music that we love. And I see it as not that's very black and white. I see it as just this huge spectrum of creative tools. And there will be some that is, coming out of people who have no talent whatsoever, or they have no training, and they might have the chance of making a great hit. But I think the vast majority of this is going to be some kind of artist tool.
One of the things that I don't think people understand is, for an artist, for someone serious, a musician trying to do this, it's not as easy as a prompt. In order to get what you want, what you're looking for, it takes time. And it takes enough time that I know for me, I've gotten to the point where I've gone, I could have done this myself manually, almost as fast or maybe faster. So it's not quite as easy as you think. And the second point to that is some of this is a fad in terms of if you're a non-musician and you're using Boomi or Udio or Suno or whatever, and you're doing it because now it's new and, hey, I can make, this great sounding music. And then what? You've done it for a while and then you move on to the next thing. So we may be worried about something that's not going to be a problem in the future.
Yeah, interesting.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought of it like that. I had an eye-opening experience with a client, a friend of mine who sadly passed away 4 months ago in a plane crash. His name was Brett James, and he's written 29 number one hits, including Jesus Take the Wheel. And what he told me the weekend before he passed, we had a meeting and we had a conference call with Suno. Suno is doing these songwriting weekends, and we were just having a conversation. And the reason I bring it up is Brett told me that his stable of writers and all the writers he knows in Nashville, they're all using Suno, but not to write songs. They use it because, as I'm sure a lot of you know, when you do a demo in Los Angeles, it's me and Dani at the piano, and we record it and we send it to our friend and whatever. Not in Nashville. In Nashville, they're buttoned up and they record it not only really well, and they're using Suno to make sure that those demos are amazing, but also when they write a song for Lainey Wilson or Morgan Wallen or whoever, it sounds like Lainey Wilson or Morgan Wallen. And the thing that I get excited about is when real professionals are using some of these tools as tools, not to write the song to, be lazy about it, but because it's a new tool, like a drum machine or a synthesizer or whatever. Are you seeing that you are working with folks that are using these as just great tools?
I'm seeing the demo use case a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I think that's a really big use case for professional musicians based on my conversations. It seems like a lot of people are even testing out their demos in different genres that they never would have tried or really had the expertise to do on their own. They're a really great country artist, a really great country songwriter. They write a song. They want to hear, what if I did an R&B version? And then they try it and they're like, there's actually viability here I never would have known before. That can be really interesting. I also attended one of the Suno songwriting camps a couple weeks ago during Grammy Week. They kind of opened their doors and let some people come in and look around. And a lot of the producers there were using Suno as a starting point, and then they essentially riffed on everything that they reprompted it like dozens of times using various tweaks of their prompt. Finally found something that they wanted to use as a jumping off point. And then they started re-recording all of the bits and pieces. If you want to look at that optimistically, this just sparked their creativity to finish a song really quickly. They all had a lot of fun. They didn't just have it totally handed to them, but cynically, you could also see that as the AI did a lot of the legwork for you. You're taking an idea from an AI model, but then you're not going to have to disclose its use in any way, shape, or form because there's no AI left in it because you just re-recorded it all. So I'm a little torn on some of those use cases. I think that it's really interesting to see how true professionals and true masters of their craft are using it in unique ways. It's not like these guys needed Suno to start this song, but they did finish it in 30 minutes, start to finish.
Wow.
Because of that technique. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, go ahead, Dani.
I was just going to say, I agree with everything that you're saying, Kristin, and I've even used tone transfer models myself. I'm working with a vocalist right now who's a guy, and I had an idea for what I wanted for the vocal, and I wanted to at least give him a version that sort of sounded more akin to what I wanted. So I used a tone transfer to make my voice into a male, so that he would have a better idea of what I wanted. Also, no one wants to hear me sing, so it saved me from some embarrassment as well.
But you took that class in college.
I did. It didn't make me more comfortable with it,
okay.
but it was useful. So I do see that as a use case. One of the things that I think you touched on, Kristin, that we also were talking about earlier in the conversation is when you are prompted with AI, then how does that impact the ultimate litmus test of creativity that happens in the room and the result and the output? Because I worry about, even if we are using tools, and the tools can be very useful, there are certainly very wonderful outliers in music that we love because they push boundaries and they do interesting things that are on the fringe. And when I look at artists like John Cage or Aphex Twin, they're terrible bets and data sets, right? That would never be suggested as a starting point for anyone. And while one side of the coin, like Kristin said, is this optimism with it's empowering so many people to create and complete, there is the other side, which is, are we flattening people's ability to think outside of the box and to do things that are creatively, we'll say, dangerous?
Yeah.
There are many studies that say that that's happening, and the more you rely on AI for any task, the more you lose the ability to manually do that task. And there's lots of studies that say that.
Well,
you've seen those videos on YouTube where they take 1-4-5, like in a major key, and they show you like 20 songs that are that chord progression. I feel like AI follows that path of least resistance, and you're not going to get a Toto or a Steely Dan or a Christian McBride out of that without some careful work.
I'd love to see an AI do something like Geese.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know. I saw the new Billy Idol film last night. I Should Be Dead, or Billy Idol Should Be Dead, and he did performance afterwards. And I thought of those songs. These are iconic songs, layers and layers and layers of complexity in there of, the guitars and the vocals and all of this. And I do feel like, am I being romantic about this, or is there something that is just inherently more beautiful and meaningful because of the human emotion and complexity that went into, like, that note is more emotional than another, that we can't replicate?
Yeah.
I have a funny story that I want to interject, and you guys can feel free to remove this from the podcast if you want.
Oh, no.
But it's on the topic of demos. So I was working on a custom song for a game, and it was a big artist represented by a major stakeholder in the industry. And we had provided them with the specs, the fee structure, everything, and they said, okay, great, let's work on this. There are some songs that are kind of halfway finished that I think would work. So they went away, came back, sent us 5 different songs. We listened to them, and one of them, we're like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. It just sounds like it just needs mastering, but this would be perfect for the game. So we went back to them and said, well, can we do this? And, can we just master it? And then we're off to the races. And they said, oh, well, yeah, that's great, but no, that's not his vocals. We just used his partially finished song and we overlaid his vocals with AI and mixed it to sound the way that he would sound if he were doing this in the studio. But he hasn't gone in. He needs to go in the studio and do the whole thing. So we didn't know. Uh-oh. We thought it sounded good enough to move forward with a little bit of mastering, and it was totally AI by the rights holder and the producers.
Wow. Kind of sobering, isn't it?
No, exactly.
Oh, my God. Which kind of leads into an interesting question for Kristin, if I may. Has Billboard taken an editorial position internally on how to cover AI-generated music? Is it credited differently? Is it charted differently? Or is it all the same? I mean, that seems like a really Herculean thing to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we're all talking about internally and constantly trying to make sure that however we phrase things is the most accurate way that we can do it. In terms of charts, since I'm not on that team, I'm not as privy to their conversations. I know that they think really long and hard about how to treat AI music on the charts. To date, there is not a rule, to my knowledge. I think I would have known if there was, but I'll fact check myself later and make sure. But yeah, I think going back to what we were saying earlier about AI assisted work and the fact that there's this gigantic spectrum of use cases, I think that has made it increasingly challenging for us to know how to use language around it. And I don't know if I have it all figured out yet, but I think it's important to me, especially in my stories. I think that's the only thing I can really speak to, that if I'm talking about an AI song, I immediately need to explain as much as I know about what the origin of the model is, what is the AI use in that quote unquote AI song, and make that clear as quickly as possible to the reader so that I don't freak people out, I guess, for lack of a better term, if really all the AI was part of the vocal in like one section. But yeah, it's an evolving conversation, but it's definitely one we're having.
Yeah. Another area of AI that I find terribly exciting, and I'm not seeing a lot of it yet, just drips and drabs. I'd love to get your thoughts on, whether it's Brenda Lee's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree that, years later, I think she recorded that when she was 13. Now you can get it in Spanish, right? You've got Holly Herndon, where she's taking her songs and it's localizing them. In other words, taking her songs and making them into Japanese or Spanish, or I just think that's absolutely phenomenal. Is it sacrilegious? And I'll go one step further and say, Mike and I, before we hit record, we were talking about how some people are very touchy about this subject. And I don't think that it's a bad thing if the rights holder agrees to it. If the estate or whoever it is says, yes, you can do this thing. I would love for AI to make an Oasis song or a Beatles song. And I know for some people, the purists they're going to, say that you're nuts. But talk a little bit about some of those types of applications to AI and your thoughts around them. Is it sacrilegious?
I don't think it's sacrilegious. Well, talking to the language part, I think that's a really fun experiment. I know Lauv tried turning one of his songs into a Korean language one because he has a ton of Korean fans, and identified that he has this fan base that he kind of can't talk to right now since he doesn't speak Korean himself. That being said, none of these songs where they've done these experiments have actually fared very well, at least on the public metrics that I've been looking at. The Brenda Lee Spanish AI version of Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree didn't fare very well. So while I was very excited by this use case at first, I'm now kind of wondering if people really want that. I actually found I think it was on X or something, someone had circulated a overdubbed or AI translation of Bad Bunny's set at the Super Bowl in English. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, he's saying all of these things. I had no idea. And to be honest, as a Bad Bunny fan, that's I'm a huge Rosalia fan as well. I kind of I love lyrics, but I kind of don't care that it's beautiful to hear them sing in a different language. There's some beautiful quality to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's sacrilegious. I think it's fun, but I don't know that it's proven to be commercially viable yet.
Well, we did just have the Olympics with that nonsense song from the 70s, the Italian song with all the fake lyrics to sound like English. So we're still kind of just enjoying the sounds, whether they mean anything or not.
I don't understand half the things that are out in English. And I don't care, because if it's a great song, a great song's a great song.
Something I've been thinking a lot about recently is just that it seems like the master recording used to be seen as the end point for a song. That's as perfect as you could get it. It's the one true version. Now a master is kind of the jumping off point in an age of AI with the rise of remixing apps. There's a million people trying to do AI remixing of licensed music right now. And I don't think all of them will last, but it's clearly a direction that people are interested in. Same thing with the translations. It just feels like a master is almost like the prerequisite, just jumping off point for all the different things you can do with music now. I can understand for some artists that this is going to feel really weird because they essentially create a canon of songs that are perfected in their eyes. And now they are losing control over how people listen to it a bit. But
yeah.
Well, this is kind of the same thing as remixes, from the 80s, 90s, 2000s in there, where an artist, and it was against the artist's will many times, where they finished the song and all of a sudden there were 3 different or 5 different remix versions coming out, and a country artist, and suddenly there's a disco version of the song. And if the artist signs off on it, yeah, no problem, but a lot of times the artist didn't. But I see it very similar to that. If the artist signs off on it, yeah, no problem. Now, another thing I'll say with the remixing apps and stem separation and things like that, I don't think the average consumer cares. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's any evidence that shows that a consumer, a listener, a fan, wants to do that, wants to go in and remix a song.
Actually, I do think there's one thing though. You could say UGC, TikTok remixes, the sped up, slowed down part.
Yes.
But I actually do agree with you on this. But that's my...
As someone where most of their credits are in remixing, I would fundamentally say that speeding up a song is different than wholly remixing a song. And I do think that less people are interested in wholly remixing songs.
That's fair. That's fair. Listen, we only have a couple more minutes, so there's something I'd really like to talk to you about before we say goodbye. I love listening to Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway and all the different podcasts that they do. And I'm going to steal a line from Kara in some of her podcasts. She'll ask, what's one thing that isn't getting enough attention, and is there one thing that we should all just calm down about? And I'd like to sort of ask you all, is there anything in AI and music or in the industry in general that really we're not talking about enough now that maybe we should be a little concerned about? And is there one thing that maybe we should just calm the hell down about?
Dani first.
Sure. I think we've touched on it a bit in this conversation, but in terms of not enough attention, I think people are so excited, and legitimately so, to use these tools that can give them skills or superpowers beyond what they could ever imagine for themselves. And then conversely, there is such value in boredom and getting stuck and not knowing what to do next and having to figure it out. And I worry that people are going to get so used to having this appendage in order to complete their work that they don't push themselves to see what they are actually capable of. So that is the part that I think does not get enough attention right now. And then in terms of what we should all calm down about, I think the majors and the licensing deals. There's a lot of cynicism around this right now. I see people online on Reddit saying the majors sold out. They're legitimizing the companies that took everyone's music. They're only doing it for themselves. Or a lot of people on Reddit even say they're taking this thing away from me, this thing that I had a right to. Depending on where you come from and how you look at it, some of that critique is fair. But what I think gets missed in the conversation is that these deals are moving the Overton window, right? And a year ago, the question was whether AI companies should have to license music at all. And that debate is pretty much over at this point. Companies are licensing, and that's a win. And what we need now is to not tear down the deals, but to make sure that the deals that are forming are not the only ones that will exist. We need dozens of these deals, variations of these deals, competing deals, in order to see how we can move the industry forward in a more robust way, in a way that's sustainable.
Nice. Yeah. Kristin.
Okay, I think one of the things that we should be talking more about, this was actually just flagged on a call that Dani and I were on yesterday, but there's like a service called Undetector, which I didn't know about until yesterday, where it can eliminate the artifacts in your song that would identify it as AI. And we're like, we didn't even get to this, which that would take a whole other hour, but
wow.
The whole walled garden debate that's going on, and like, how can we contain the amount of AI music that's getting made? The thing is like, I don't mean to be a pessimist and say we shouldn't try to contain it. I think we should. But also, there are going to be people finding the craziest ways to get around any sort of gating, and we need to be continually talking about that. I'm glad that it's starting to be a discussion, but yeah, there are going to be plenty of more apps that are just like Undetector that are helping people evade detection. And I think we should calm down about like, truly, why could I name you 10 AI remixing apps right now? That's crazy. We don't need them all. And then they're also competing against big companies like Spotify, who are also clearly interested in this same concept. Yeah. I'm sure all of them will have a slightly different variation on the same idea, but we do not need all of this. I think Bobby is right. There are, and Dani, there isn't a lot of evidence that everyone wants to do this. I think UGC remixing is the best one that I've found, but we need to chill. Maybe less of us need to be pursuing the exact same idea.
And Vickie.
I'm laughing. I want to say +1 to Dani on what I call the bigger humanity risk of dumbing down humans by outsourcing core skills to, critical thinking, remixing, all of that. That's great. I hadn't thought about that in application here. But I think that I think we're spending way too much time thinking about generative AI in a binary sense, that it is either generative, it's either AI or not. And I think that is completely wrong, because it is creating false conversations around this, when in fact it is 1,000 shades of gray already of tools. And so that's the thing. I think we're just too focused on this. And I think a lot of it is fraudulent. So there's a mechanism in place for, making sure that people are not creating a song, pushing it in, then hiring a streaming bank to deliver themselves royalties, a la Boomy. And I think the debate around walled gardens versus openness is also an attempt by the industry to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And while we are licensing, which is good, that is how we move disruptive technologies forward, the industry has a really long history of trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And I just don't think we're going to be able to control it. I think we would be much better off figuring out how to attribute, how to pay, how to ensure fairness, and have these tools help artists of all different sizes and shapes.
Thanks. And Bobby.
Well, Dani, sorry to say, but I fall into the category of feeling that the label's sold out on the licensing. I understand the possibility of a new income stream. That being said, what I don't think people are talking enough about is the fact that the name, image, and likeness also goes with that license. So not only can an AI platform do something with your music, but they can do it with your likeness as well. And that I don't think enough people are talking about. As far as things that maybe we should calm down about, losing your creativity. Again, it's another tool.
Yeah. Listen, I know we're running a little bit over. I just want to let you guys know, all of you, I have so much respect and admiration for you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk with us. I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you
all.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.